June 10th, 1829. The first boat race between Cambridge and Oxford takes place, which leads to the development of the sports monocle. Welcome to The Revisionists. I'm Brian Flynn.
I'm Zach Powers. Already we're laughing. We have such a good time at The Revisionists.
Oh, such a good time. Almost
with our hilarious,
up my own name.
Our hilarious intro. The name of our podcast is A Laugh Fucking Riot.
No, it wasn't even the podcast. It was my own name I fucked up, basically.
Yeah.
Almost fucked up, but then I corrected.
What'd you say?
I said Brian Flynn. I was veering off in a weird direction, though.
But I think we agree. The Revisionist is hilarious. It just proves Malcolm Gladwell can't tell a joke because he went with revisionist history. What the fuck is that? Revisionist history. That is not a joke. You fucked up the delivery, Gladwell. Again.
Fucking Gladwell. Someone tagged us in a photo of Malcolm Gladwell's podcast, and I'm just like, nope, that's...
A photo of the podcast? Were they holding up their iPhone with the cover art from Malcolm Gladwell?
Just like the logo, I guess.
Met Malcolm Gladwell's podcast on the subway today.
Well, I was just shitting in a bag. Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of New York City, we have a great show for you tonight with a fabulous comic who is from Colorado and New York at the same time. I don't know why I said it like that.
It's also
so manic
recording.
Right now.
We just talked about Doctor Who, and I was going to continue that riff, but I realized it happened off mic, so never mind.
Okay, I'm glad we brought it up, though. Please welcome to the show the fantastic Brett Hiker.
Hello, kids.
Brett, thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm stoked. I'm stoked for this.
Especially, I will just say this up front. We gave you some very short notice for this one.
We did.
We had some scheduling difficulties again this week, but we...
You could have said that at the end, if it goes real bad. Be like, I just want to remind all the folks back home.
Oh, no, I will say it multiple
we can say it again,
times throughout my thing.
Usually we say it even when everything went smoothly, just as an excuse in case things go bad.
Shut up.
We had very little time to put together our 3-year anniversary show.
We're very new at this, to quote Paul Ryan today.
If it's a shitty episode, we just record us saying, oh, we had no time to prepare and slotting it at the beginning of the podcast.
Yeah, there's just a standard version of me saying that over some stock music. But Zach, you're going to be judging and officiating this episode, so if you want to take it away.
Yeah, if you are a first-time listener to this here podcast, the basic idea is, over the next 45 minutes or so, we will discuss a person from history. One of my co-hosts will give the real account. In this case, I think that's going to be Brett. And one person, I think in this case Brian, will give a bullshit, bananas, batshit crazy alternate version of that person's life. And at the end, I think now also some of our listeners will be able to vote on what becomes the actual history going forward.
Yes, yes, indeed. So the verdict at the end of the episode will only be Zach's vote, which still counts. But then one of our...
I am not a felon.
Yes. One of our Patreon reward tiers is that people get to vote on the outcomes of episodes. And so there's enough people doing that now that we will be doing that. So, Mazel Tov. Anyway.
Do I get a vote?
Well,
no, since you're presenting a history, you don't get to vote.
It's assumed you vote for your own.
Right,
but
well,
I don't. You might be very selfless.
I want to point out too that if it sounds like I have a cat in my lap right now, I do not. It is a chinchilla.
Just
for the
shade
the
of
folks
difference.
back home.
the classic
What's this cat's
sound of
name
having
that
a
just jumped in my
cat
lap?
in one's lap.
Willow. That's Willow.
All right.
Willow's the one.
Willow
who
the
comes
chinchilla.
Out. Yeah.
But
yeah.
Just to finish off old business, last time we talked about what was that horrible racist name again?
Henry Morton Stanley.
Henry Morton Stanley, that's right. And I believe we ended up going with the alternate version of his life, which predicts that in the future, there will be some kind of race war. And Henry Morton Stanley was one of, I think, 316 people who got sent back in time to try and rig the results of the race war by finding a super rare, I guess, element, I think it was.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Trinium.
Elements, relics. Yeah. Trillium.
Trillium.
That's, of course, Jason Key's story. So, again, thank you, Jason, for that.
And what was his name? Morton Downey Jr.?
Morton Downey. Yeah, it was Robert Downey Jr. Of course, horrible racist time traveler. Willow is all over Brett. But yes, Brett, you are doing the actual history. So whenever you're ready, if you want to go ahead and take it away.
Okay, so the subject is George Washington Williams.
Oh, did I not say that?
Oh,
I had
yeah,
one
we
job.
We didn't say it, yeah.
We're flying very loose tonight.
I mean, does it really matter who says it? I mean, you guys weren't going to explain who he was, right? Because that would ruin my portion of the show.
No, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll let you have all the surprises about this particular person.
Even though his name will be the episode title.
George Washington Williams?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so his backstory is he was born in 1849 in Pennsylvania to parents who were former slaves that were freed when Pennsylvania banned slavery. He was the oldest of 4 children. His brothers were John, Thomas, and Harry. He had a limited education and a stint in a house of refuge where he learned barbering. So that's occupation number 1. Let's count these, all right?
Yeah.
Barber, number 1.
Very, very basic, like, good job to fall back on.
Yeah, and then he enlisted in the Union Army when he was only 14, under an assumed name. So he was a barber before age 14.
Yeah, yeah.
There was people trusting a 12-year-old to cut their hair.
Yeah, he was the subject of a Dickens serial, George Williams' Child Barber.
They say when you're young, it's easier to learn the language of hair. And once you're after a certain age, it's nearly impossible.
Yeah, of course.
That's why your hair falls out and turns gray. You forget how to speak to it as you grow older.
Of course. You can't lure it back onto your head.
Yeah, using the classic children's prayer that every night they use. Of course, we are all in our late 20s or early 30s and have forgotten this prayer.
Of course. That's why, of course, children, best hair.
Yeah.
That's
they
their
win the
slogan.
best hair award every year. Children.
All right. So he was a soldier in the Civil War. After that, he went to Mexico and joined the Republican Army.
And I'm going to go ahead and say soldier, occupation number 2.
Yeah, soldier too.
Child soldier.
Child soldier.
Yeah, by our standards, too. Yeah.
Under the command of General Espinosa, he was fighting to overthrow Emperor Maximilian.
Which that's a crazy story in and of itself, which we will get. But basically, he was like the sort of shitty son of a German emperor, German or French, who they basically were like, you can rule Mexico, and just sent him away, and he died in a civil war in Mexico.
Have you guys done him?
Not yet.
Nope.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a really insane story.
Okay, so he received commission as lieutenant, learned some Spanish, and got a reputation as a good gunner. Which, I mean, to get a reputation as a good gunner, you also got to be a pretty good ducker, or else you don't stick around.
I mean, that's how war happens.
Yeah,
It goes
The old gun and duck.
yeah.
Yeah. It's like dodgeball. If you can't dodge, how useful is your throw going to be?
Yeah,
'Cause at
how
the end
good
of the
a
day. Yeah.
So he was with the Army for 5 years, served in Indian Territory, which is where this podcast is being recorded, I believe, is Indian Territory.
I mean, the whole of the United States.
It's fair
enough. Once back in civilian life, the young veteran decided to attend college and was accepted to Howard University, a historically black college. He's black, by the way. That's very key to this, to his story. In D.C., he didn't stay there very long, and began studies at Newton Theological Institution and became the first African-American graduate there. Met Sarah A. Starrett during a visit to Chicago. They were married and had one son together. After graduation, Williams was ordained as a Baptist minister.
He went from Indian country to Chicago, just like somebody else I know. I was going to try and think of somebody who's not me, but I failed to do it.
Just like somebody else I know.
So we're up to now. He's got barber, soldier, and Baptist minister.
Mm-hmm. All right.
He had the support of Frederick Douglass, William Lloyd Garrison. He founded The Commoner, a monthly journal in D.C. So he was now the editor of a magazine, if you will. That's occupation number 4. Yep. Then he moved to Ohio and studied law under Alphonso Taft, who is the father of President Taft.
Old Taft Daddy.
Yeah.
Big Daddy Taft.
That's what he was called. Even before he had a son, he was called Old Taft Daddy.
So now we can add lawyer to that.
Yep.
And that law degree led him to becoming the first black elected to the Ohio State Legislature. So now he's a politician as well.
Mm-hmm. Served there for 2 years, I believe.
Sure. Well,
Sorry.
It says one term, 1880 to 1881. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. In 1885, President Chester A. Arthur appointed Williams as the minister, resident, and consul general to Haiti, which he never served. I don't know. He just never showed up to work for that job.
But
he already had 5 jobs.
He already had so many jobs.
He had so many barbering appointments.
He was still barbering at this point.
I mean, it's a passion.
His wife was on his ass about you should be driving an Uber on the side.
Yeah, an Uber was just a horse at the time. Oh, hang on. Here's my Uber. Leaps on top of a horse.
1888, he became a foreign delegate and wrote a few books. Like history books. I mean, it became the thing he was most obsessed about. It eventually was he became a historian. So that's occupation number 26. And then the big thing that he did is that in 1889 he went to the Congo Free State, as it was called at the time, before Michael Crichton changed it to just Congo.
Also, Congo Free State, we did touch on some of the horrific things that happened there in the last episode.
Oh, really? In the last episode?
Yeah.
Are you guys doing like a whole Congolese section of...
Well, right now we're doing a few episodes on like second wave colonialism as a lead into talking about World War I.
But this section of the podcast is being sponsored by the Congo remake. So yes, we are intentionally, every story is going to have some kind of tie-in.
Congo remake?
They're not, but interesting enough is the last Tarzan movie that came out had George Washington Williams in it, played by Samuel L. Jackson.
Right.
So he knew Tarzan. Someone's already done a revisionist history on this. You guys got to top that. Someone made a Hollywood blockbuster.
Given the Rotten Tomatoes score, it should not be difficult to top that.
Yeah, so he went to Congo and saw all the horrible things going on there, and then wrote this very famous open letter to the King of Belgium, who the Belgian had colonized. It started a Congo line in Congo. No, they'd colonized it, and they were... well, here's the thing. It's the most interesting facts I have were all the horrible things in Congo.
Well, I mean, we could start recounting some of the horrible things, because they are relevant and worth remembering.
Yeah, and if I repeat something you guys already said, just go, I know, next. All right? We cool with this?
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, this is an excerpt from his letter where he talks about just kind of like the first encounters these tribesmen had with white people coming through. Mm-hmm. And, okay, I'm just going to read it word for word. He goes, there were instances in which Mr. Henry M. Stanley sent one white man with 4 or 5 Zanzibar soldiers to make treaties with native chiefs. The staple argument was that the white man's heart had grown sick of the wars and rumors of war between one chief and another, between one village and another, that the white man was at peace with his black brother and desired to confederate all African tribes for the general defense and public welfare. And then all the sleight of hand tricks had been carefully rehearsed, and he was now ready for his work. A number of electric batteries had been purchased in London, and when attached to the arm under the coat, communicated with a band of ribbon which passed over the palm of the white brother's hand. And when he gave the black brother a cordial grasp of the hand, the black brother was greatly surprised to find the white man's brother so strong. So was he shocking him?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, that's a thing that they would do with a lot of. They would like basically shock people when they shook hands with them, just to try to make them think they were
to like big tie them, to like do that thing. Basically, it's the
do
same
the Trump
thing
handshake,
Trump
yeah.
does, where he pulls people in really hard.
Did you guys talk about this already?
No,
that's
I
just a
didn't.
fact
I didn't hear about
remembered
this.
from one of the books I read about.
To be honest, I thought this was going to end up being some kind of horrible Joker-esque death trap for a moment.
Okay, so greatly surprised to find his white brother so strong that he nearly knocked him off his feet in giving him the hand of fellowship. When the native inquired about the disparity of strength between himself and his white brother, he was told the white man could pull up trees and perform the most prodigious feats of strength. Next came the lens act. The white brother took from his pocket a cigar, carelessly bit off the end, held up the glass to the sun, and complacently smoked his cigar, to the great amazement and terror of his black brother. The white man explained his intimate relation to the sun and declared that if he were to request him to burn up his black brother's village, it would be done.
Jesus Christ! Yeah.
The third act was the gun trick. The white man took a percussion cap gun, tore the end of paper which held the powder to the bullet, and poured the powder and paper into the gun, at the same time slipping the bullet into the sleeve of the left arm. A cap was placed under the nipple of the gun, and the black brother was implored to step off 10 yards and shoot at his white brother to demonstrate his statement that he was a spirit and therefore could not be killed.
Yeah.
After much begging, the black brother aims the gun at his white brother, pulls the trigger. The gun is discharged. The white man stoops, takes the bullet from his shoe.
I imagine did every negotiation have to be scored by the final countdown? Is that like kind of part of the negotiation tactic?
Wait, Zach, you were breaking up. What was that?
Oh, I asked if every one of these negotiations had to be scored to the tune of the final countdown.
It's like Judge Harry, like fucking close up magic.
He had a bunch of like white tigers behind him as he's doing it, and just then in the last part of this, he says, "By such means as these, too silly and disgusting to mention, and a few boxes of gin, whole villages have been signed away to your majesty." You know, to you, king.
Yeah.
Now, this is supposed to be a fun podcast, so stop me if they start getting too horrific, because
I mean, the episode on Stanley itself
Was unimaginable.
It was so bad. It was so horrific.
okay.
It wasn't bad. It was just like very brutal because it's a very brutal subject. It's hard to just be like all dicks and butts about it.
For instance, your story is conspicuously free of, say, murder so far. So it's pretty mild, comparatively speaking.
We're coming up on the murder section.
The requisite murder section.
All right, bring out the murder book. Clunk. Flip, 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 flip. Turns key and unlocks book.
Just the next paragraph, so I'm going to start reading
Okay.
it. Feel free to chime in at any point, too. Your Majesty's government has been and is now guilty of waging unjust and cruel wars against natives, with the hopes of securing slaves and women to minister to the behest of the officers of your government. In such slave-hunting raids, one village is armed by the state against the other, and the force thus secured is incorporated with the regular troops. I have no adequate terms with which to depict to your Majesty the brutal acts of your soldiers upon such raids as these. The soldiers who open the combat are usually the bloodthirsty, cannibalistic Bengalas who give no quarter to the aged grandmother or nursing child at the breast of its mother. There are instances in which they have brought the heads of the victims to the white officers in the steamers and afterwards eaten the bodies of slain children. In one war, 2 Belgian army officers saw from the deck of their steamer a native in a canoe some distance away. He was not a combatant and was ignorant of the conflict in progress upon the shore, some distance away. The officer made a wager of £5 that they could hit the native with their rifles. 3 shots were fired, and the native fell dead, pierced through the head, and the trade canoe was transformed into a funeral barge and floated down the river.
This might be a good time to point out that a lot of the events that happened in the Belgian Congo were the inspiration for the book Heart of Darkness, which was the inspiration for Apocalypse Now, if any of this sounds depressingly familiar.
And then the other thing was just like what happened. I started reading more about the Congolese humanitarian disaster, and what happened was the king more or less had a quota for how much rubber wanted to be collected. That was the big export. I believe in the Tarzan movie they changed it to diamonds.
Yeah, I believe. Well, it started out with ivory, but once like vulcanized rubber and tires became like a huge commodity, then once they realized that rubber trees grew, all over the Congo, then rubber became the main thing.
So they had these...
and also the Tarzan movie might not be the most accurate reference point for some of these things.
Listen, if you guys have any questions about any of this, please check out Tarzan. Fantastic film.
By the way, our guest Alexander Skarsgård, I believe.
So they had these rubber quotas that were just kind of like insane that they couldn't really fill, and if you couldn't fill them, you were punished by death. And the way that you had to prove that you had killed these slaves for not getting enough rubber was to present their hands, was to cut their hands off and give it to someone. And sometimes the hands were collected by the soldiers of the Force Publique, sometimes by the villages themselves. There were even small wars where villages attacked neighboring villages to gather hands, since the rubber quotas were too unrealistic to fill. For example, this one person tells a story of what is this person? Oh, Leon Fives. He says, all blacks saw this man as the devil of the equator. From all the bodies killed in the field, you had to cut off the hands. He wanted to see the number of hands cut off by each soldier who had to bring them in baskets. A village was refused to provide rubber would be completely swept clean. As a young man, I saw this guy, then guarding the village of Borieka, take a net, put 10 arrested natives in it, attach big stones to the net, and make it tumble into the river. Rubber caused these torments. That's why we no longer want to hear his name spoken. Soldiers made young men kill or rape their own mothers and sisters.
Yeah.
In the name of rubber.
Going back to Leon, one of the prototype characters for Colonel Kurtz from Apocalypse Now.
Oh, really?
Heart of Darkness. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
One of the rumored.
His name was Kurtz in Heart of Darkness too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, and this is the environment that Williams is like going in and writing this very public letter. Well, he's still like in the middle of the colony and like is still requiring like the aid of the Belgians basically to be able to travel.
Yeah. Not a lot of people know that the classic children's argument, I'm rubber, you're glue, was originally coined to describe how horrible different humanitarian catastrophes were. We'll get to the glue catastrophe in due time.
When you were setting up that joke, I was so skeptical. But boy howdy, did that. That is some good soup.
Okay.
Is that not a saying?
Good soup?
It's fine.
I've never heard it.
Okay, well then.
Yeah, that's what you want to hear at any comedy show. It's the classic refrain from the audience. That is good soup.
It's a regional thing. I think it's a New England thing.
So that's more or less it. He wrote this open letter about all this stuff and had it published, and it kind of put some heat on the Belgian king to clean up his colonies, which he didn't, which kind of pissed off George Washington Williams. Mm-hmm. But it eventually was like the first step to like a longer process. But George Washington Williams died and was never able to see any sort of progress whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the story, more or less. Yeah. And now Brian's going to make that fun.
He had a very inspiring early life and then went to the most depressing place conceivable and died.
Yeah, these colonialism episodes don't end well. Like even for the heroes. Yeah, and I will again preface my alternate history by saying very short notice.
Yeah, when a few episodes ago, I'm just saying, like, we were like, oh, we have to do a new section, and we decided to flip a coin between colonialism and history's greatest parties, and it just, we came up on the wrong side on that one.
Of course. Well, because all I could think of was the Monster Mash. Which,
Yeah.
Turned out colonialism was the world's greatest party for some.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I thought about doing a revisionist, and the only idea I could come up with is just like the exact same story, but he wears a funny hat the entire time, like a real silly Carmen Miranda
Jesus
hat.
Christ.
Spoilers.
That's so close to mine.
Really? I'll shut up then. Silly hats. Easy writing trope.
What if instead of George Washington Williams, his name was George Washington Hats? I think it'd go a little something like this.
Oh, God damn it. Okay, so our story starts, as all stories do, in heaven. And God one day was not super on point, not like a good day for God.
It wasn't on brand.
No, just super. It was sort of like God's self-care day.
Mm-hmm.
And the spirit that was supposed to be inserted into America's first president was channeled instead into a different child. This is the story that George Washington Williams was told by his mother, Ellen Williams, who gave George a special triangle hat and told him that the power of George Washington was trapped inside of it. So even in his early years in barber school, when the other kids would make fun of him for his, quote, very silly hat, I don't know why I needed to quote that. Again, I wrote this in like an hour.
Yeah, I mean, that's a real... The slams that children come up with. Your hat is very silly.
Was Frosty the Snowman playing in the background as you thought of this?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was just...
As soon as the magic hat was placed on his head.
Fuck, I wasn't even thinking of Frosty. Shit. The spirit of George Washington made George Washington Williams discover the perseverance he had inside to continue and like finish his schooling. And then he enlisted in the Union Army, and he was just a scared 14-year-old, as you would be. And when the general told him that his hat wasn't regulation, he decided to carry it around in his rucksack. And he believed it was the hat which gave him the courage to fight the war. I have something here in my notebook that says describe the hat, but I didn't write anything after that. So
Tri-corner? I mean, how much more do you need?
Felt.
Was there a feather in his head?
Like,
yes, there was a feather.
Of what bird?
A golden eagle.
oh,
that he got
nice.
himself. Yeah.
Did he call it macaroni, as they were wont to do at the time?
As was the fashion at the time, yes. Mm-hmm. We have sufficiently described the hat.
I mean, it could be, do the adjectives amazing and technicolor describe the hat?
No, I mean, it was 1830, so it was kind of just like drab blue felt.
What size was the hat?
14.
14.
Mm.
So was it real big on him when he was young?
Yeah, he grew into it.
Okay.
So when he studied under Taft's dad, he would like fall asleep on a hat during study breaks.
I'm still having a little trouble picturing the hat. Was there a card that said press sticking out of it, or?
I mean, eventually, yeah. When he was like, he was writing and reporting, he put
each of his occupations. He added something to the hat.
Yeah, you could put all sorts of things in a hat.
He was quoted as saying, while in Congo, "What a scoop."
Yeah, when he was a barber, he kept his scissors in the hat.
It's worth noting that in the Congo at the time, scooping was a popular form of torture.
Oh, what a
Oh,
scoop.
millions died. So, of course, during all this time, he's achieving great things. But George Washington's hat was constantly eating away at him. And it ate away at his ability to take any pride in his accomplishments or feel confident that he was able to do these things. But meanwhile, people are noticing him. His two most famous books were a history of African Americans from 1609 to 1880, basically in 2 volumes. He won acclaim for that, and he goes to the White House to meet with Chester A. Arthur, who's now remembered mainly as the president who met George Washington Williams, actually.
Really?
Yeah, probably. He brought the hat. There were, and this was a time when there were different stories circulating about the Congo and King Leopold was trying to sell, what he was doing there. And he was saying it was a great place where he was bringing Christianity and civilization to Central Africa. And this being 1889, George Washington Williams views it as his chance to educate the people there in his own way. So he goes to King Leopold to get permission to visit. Well, go ahead, Zach.
Oh, I was just going to say, for context, Chester A. Arthur was the guy who took over after Garfield was assassinated. So that's probably what you know him from. If you have ever a Chester A. Arthur trivia night, that's probably the only...
the most poorly attended bar trivia night. It's just one PhD candidate drinking in a corner.
He was sworn in at a brownstone in New York that's like a Chinese restaurant now, I think.
So appropriate.
Yeah.
I think he did have pretty severe mutton chops.
Yeah, it was very fashionable at the time, actually.
Yeah.
He was actually considered very fashionable.
So Williams goes to King Leopold to get permission to visit the Congo, and the permission is rejected, but he goes anyway. I can't believe I even wrote this next part down. He tells a friend, quote, "This hat's got some balls," end quote. He goes there and he encounters the horror of the Congo and everything that's happening there that we've described in the last couple episodes. And it changes him. And deep in the heart of the Belgian Congo and at great risk to himself, William sits down to write his open letter to King Leopold. And while he's doing that, a breeze kicks up and blows his hat away. And he's bereft for a few minutes, and he doesn't know how he's supposed to compose this letter and how he's going to go on, but he also knows he must. And so, pushing through his doubts, he begins writing, and that's when he realizes the truth, that the magic hat was just a gag, and the real power was him all along. So it's like a Dumbo's feather situation, basically. That's the whole thing I based that on. And that's again, doesn't really change the
Much.
things he did. It just adds a little zazz to the story.
You know,
I would have revised that in itself and just be like, and then they double checked and the hat was magic.
Yeah.
He deserves no credit.
I didn't want to take that away from
we
him.
should be talking about the hat the entire time. That's the real hero here.
I didn't want to take that
maybe-
away from him.
maybe the hat wasn't initially magic, but by spending so much time, he made the hat magic. So it wasn't the hat that gave him the power, but he slowly imbued the hat with a magical
cool.
power.
I like that. We can go with that.
Great.
Well, Zach, before we get to your judgment, real quick, as always, you can keep in touch with us via our website, revisionistpodcast.com. And you can rate and review the podcast on iTunes, which is super helpful to us. And always reach out to us on the social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And I mentioned before our Patreon page, which helps support the show. I've mentioned on the last few episodes that we have been having some equipment issues, and so that's something we're going to try to invest in very soon. And any support you could possibly throw that way would be insane, and thank you. Brett, I didn't ask you this before we started, but do you have anything you'd like to plug?
Ooh, plugs, huh? Yeah, we are bringing Comedians Power Hour to Boulder for the first time ever.
Oh, nice.
Taking over the Sunday Boulder Comedy Show and doing a doubleheader Comedians Power Hour there.
When is that?
That'll be June 25th.
June 25th. Okay.
Yeah, and if you guys don't know, can I pitch Power Hour real quick?
Yeah, do it.
All right, so the whole premise of the show that I run is much like the drinking game, Power Hour, where you take a shot of beer every minute for an hour. We have two comics go on stage, and they go back and forth doing 2-minute sets, but every time that you switch out comics, they both take a double shot of beer. Mm-hmm. And then as they get drunker and drunker, we throw in just random challenges, like now do 2 minutes of each other's jokes. And then they get even drunker and like, now for the next 2 minutes, you have to give each other a best man speech. Mm-hmm. And then, it gets crazier and crazier, and just we have them do shit. Yeah. It's very difficult.
And
for
eventually, it just becomes like a saw challenge where they have to cut off their hand. I feel like this is the wrong episode to say cut off your hand. I actually want to do like jaw trap. Yeah.
It's tough. Who are the comedians who are going to be on it?
Our lineup is yet to be finalized.
But that's an awesome show, and that's going to be up in Boulder. Go check that out. Zach, did you want to mention anything?
Well, Stage of Fools is still on hiatus, but the entire back catalog is on iTunes if you want to check it out before the new season, which will probably be in a few months.
Awesome. As for me, I'll just mention that Nighttime Tonight, which Brett did last month and was hilarious.
It was a hoot.
Is happening June 15th. So the Thursday after this is released, and it happens the third Thursday of every month, so come check that out. But Zach, if you're ready to cast your vote in the judgment.
Yeah. So this is one of the ones where the alternate is hems very close to the real history, probably for the best in this case. But I do like the concept of I just like this goofy hat. And in fact, because we described it so much, that's a lot of the charm of this hat. And I also like to think that there's an additional scene. First, I like to imagine that as a young child, in very childish handwriting, he wrote George on the inside of the hat. And I like to imagine that years later, by pure happenstance, he found it with another child, and it was like the end of Toy Story 3 where he gave it away. Yeah.
Oh.
That is
so that the hat continues on.
Yeah, it continues its journeys possibly to this day. And for that reason, I think I'm going to go with the alternate this time.
All right. Well, Brett, thank you for being here, and thank you for filling in on short notice again.
Whatever.
Listeners, anytime you get a chance to check out Brett, it's so worth it. He's hilarious, so do that whether you are in Denver or elsewhere. But I think that'll do it for this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it's unanimous. That'll do it.
You're asking me a question. Like, I don't know. Do you guys have an outro? This ain't my podcast.
Resolved.
No, we just ask our guest and each other if that'll do it for this episode. We take a vote.
For everyone here at The Revisionist, I'm Brian Flynn.
I'm Zach Powers.
Have a good time.